Hello, welcome to EverydayHDR.com. My name is Blake Rudis, and today I want to talk really quickly about how you can take a black and white layer of your photograph, a duplicate layer of your photograph, and make the colors pop out in that photograph using a black and white layer. So I'm going to be using a series of adjustment layers to show you what I'm talking about here, and then go into black and white effects too to really get a nice punchy black and white photograph, and then you're going to see the magic happen. So the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate this layer by pressing Control J on a PC, Command J on a Mac. Once I have that layer duplicated, I'm going to press Control Shift U or Command Shift U on a Mac to make a black and white photograph. Now, the idea behind black and white is that you want true black and you want true white because they are the stars of the show. If you desaturate a photograph, what you're doing is you're taking basically RGB, CMYK, those true colors, and turning them to a 50% gray, and then letting their hues kind of fall in between that white and black scale. So it's the easiest way to do a black and white conversion here in Photoshop because it's just Control Shift U. But it's not necessarily the best way. But it does give me a good representation of where my colors are kind of falling in line. So what I'm going to do is also build a threshold layer here. And in this threshold adjustment layer, this is going to be showing me color, not necessarily color information, but if I move this to the far left, this is going to show me where all of the black rests in this photograph. So there's not a whole lot of black here, just a couple little specks of true, pure black. As I move it a little bit farther, you're going to see that those black speckles start to increase. My goal here is to increase those blacks and make them a little bit punchier. Now when I move it to the right, you see here that there's not a whole heck of a lot of white either. Where I thought that this right here in that area should have been pure white, when we look at that threshold, we find that it's not. That maybe just like the outer rim of that is pure white. So I'm going to do some things to try and boost that a little bit. So I'm going to go to Filter and then go to Topaz Labs and Topaz Black and White Effects too. Now, if you used something like Camera Raw or maybe even a black and white adjustment layer, that's perfectly fine too. I like black and white effects too because it's quick, it's easy, and it gives me a nice black and white photograph with a lot of different capabilities other than just being black and white photographs. So I'm going to go right here into the conversion panel, go to the basic exposure, and just bump up those blacks a little bit. The reason why I like black and white effects too is that if I say, hey, increase the blacks, it does it. If I say increase the whites, it does it. So that's going to help me increase those areas. If I deselect this, you see that there's already let me increase this actually. There's already a punchier, more contrasty image that works. You can also adjust the contrast too to increase the contrast between black and white, but I kind of like using, instead of one global contrast adjustment, using two more local ones like the black and white separately. Now I also like the adaptive exposure that they have in here. It's very similar to what you see in Topaz Adjust because it helps make that image look just a little bit more grittier, and I like the way this is working here on this photograph. A little too much in the regions. Let me move that adaptive exposure down a little bit. Let's see what happens when you take this off and turn it back on. I like how it's starting to bring out some whites and those highlights on the grass, the blades of grass. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that. You can increase the detail too, but it might get a little too punchy when we do our transition. That's all I'm really going to do here. And that's all I would really do in any form of black and white conversion. Is just increase those blacks and increase those whites to make it so that I have a nice punchy black and white image. So that's where we started. Not a whole lot. It's predominantly on the 50% gray level, and here's where we are now. So I'm going to press OK. And there's another way we can tell the overall color cast of our photo. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this background layer real quick just to show you this, and press Command or Control Shift U. And then I'm going to go to Filter and go to Blur and then go to Average. And then I'm going to take this one, I'm going to duplicate it real quick and then hide this and go to, I'm going to average this one too. So we should end up with, because our image is a little bit punchier, we should end up with a different color of gray. So the one that we started with, if we look at the info on it, it's about, it's between like somewhere between like a 50 and 60% gray. This is looking a little bit less than that. So it's kind of hard to tell in the video clip, but I'm just gonna go ahead and delete those layers. But that's a way that you can tell what the average is of your black and white photo, where the average of the colors rests on that 50% gray. For the most part, it's going to be around 50% gray, but we want to veer one way to the left or to the right of that, so that we get just a little bit more of a punch in the overall tone of this image. So now I'm going to go to luminosity. What luminosity does is it just takes the lightness values of whatever is in the layer that you're putting on top of the other one. So it has no respect to color at all. It just looks at the light levels that are there. So there's the image before, there's the image after. And of course, I could always go in here and make a mask and black out any areas that I didn't necessarily like. Oops, my brush is a little too big. And my brush palette and make my brush smaller. It's a huge brush. What was I doing last time? And then I can just kind of paint some of these areas out, because some of those areas in the grass I like to have shine right through. But what I do like is how the black is starting to rest in those shadow areas, and I do have a more pure white up there. What I don't like is what's happening to this orange here, so I'm going to go ahead and mask that out, and mask out the areas right around that highlight. I'm going to let that highlight blow out. I like that highlight blowout. It was a highlight blowout when I was there, so I'm going to let it be a highlight blowout here. So there's our before and there's our after. If we went ahead and looked at the threshold of this, if I go ahead and say, let me duplicate this layer, and then I'll delete this mask, put this back to normal, and then make an adjustment layer here for the threshold, you can see that I brought back a lot more black in this photo. And I brought back a lot more white in this photo, where over here you see a clip, so that's non-information on the side. But I brought back that white where that white should have been in that photograph. So here's our before, here's our after. We just bumped up that contrast a little bit with a black and white layer. Again, my name is Blake Rudis with EverydayHDR.com. I use this technique quite a bit. A lot of times I'll make gradient maps and use a gradient map to do it, and you can just as easily do that right here by going to gradient map and making sure that your gradient map is black and white, and you can do the same thing with that gradient map and make that luminosity as well. So there's another take on it, a little bit different, a little less control than you would have with something like black and white effects too. Alright, Blake Rudis here with EverydayHDR.com. I hope you have a great weekend and start using black and white more, even in your color post-processing. Take care.